All right, so Natasha, can you change Dorothea to being one of our presenters? She is sitting for Dr. Rowe.
Now a presenter.
Thank you.
Yeah. Natasha, do you have the capabilities of resending the link to Tiffany?
Tiffany. Let's see. Okay.
You have her email address?
I sent a request over to Tiffany.
Coette?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So who do we
Okay,
have?
she's on now. Perfect.
All right, perfect. So we have Tiffany, we've got Bob, Patrice, just checking to see if I have quorum before we officially start. I know that the deputy commissioner will be on shortly. She has a meeting that overlaps slightly. We need 2 more, I think, to have quorum before we can get started.
Jen, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure because it was saying that my mic was disabled, but thank you.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I make 8, so we just need 1 more. And then we can begin and the other folks can join in as they go along here. Check my
Chair,
email.
I'm counting 9, so I think you do have a quorum.
Who else are you saying that I am not? I see Tiffany, Bob, Patrice, Kristen, Dean Horton, Sarah, Dorothea, and myself.
Jen Delaney
And then
is on.
Bob.
Oh,
I'm
she's
here.
on.
Yep, I'm here. It's Jen.
I didn't see you in my list here. Sorry, Jen.
And then Bob Sartaris was on as well.
All right, so we officially have quorum as the other ones kind of come in. We'll keep track of that. Looks like Jenny Graves is on as well now. All right, I will go ahead and officially call the meeting to order at 1:05 p.m. on January 12th. I'll go ahead and do the roll for attendance purposes. Jen Rodriguez here. Dr. Ritchie? Not here yet. Kristen?
Here.
Elsa Batista? All right. Tiffany Coette?
Here.
Perfect. Jen Delaney?
Hello, I'm here.
Thank you. Sarah?
Here.
Jenny Graves?
Here.
Okay. Where am I on the list? Margaret?
Here.
Mel?
Here.
Hamish? Okay. Shannon? No, she was having some trouble as well getting in. Patrice?
Here.
Okay. Sitting for Dr. Rowe is, I want to make sure, Dorothea. So sitting for
Here.
Dr. Rowe is Dorothea. Thank you. And Bob,
Here.
I said Patrice already, correct?
Yes, you said Patrice.
All right, thank you, sorry. Bob, and then the deputy commissioner will be in shortly. Sorry, somebody must be at the door. All right. Kristen, can you bring up the agenda, please?
All right, can everyone see my screen okay?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. And Dr. Ritchie is now on as well. Dr. Ritchie is in attendance. Thank you. Okay, so we did our roll. Thank you. We just need our approval of minutes. Take a moment to look over the minutes. If you want to bring those up, Kristen. Perfect, thank you. Is there any adjustment to the minutes? Right. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and approve the minutes by general consensus. Thank you. And then we will move to our next items. Public participation for virtual meetings are done via email. Karen has been out sick, so we have not received any public participation that may have come via email. Upon her return, should there be any, I will forward it to the board for consideration. Our announcements, Karen is out, so there are no administrative announcements at this time. Board business, I don't have any, well, I do have a couple actually. So we rated public participation. Just to be aware for those watching, we're having some technical difficulties with both the website. Our agenda and information was listed as of Friday and posted there as of Friday. The Department of Administrative Services, DAS, did an upgrade over the weekend. There might be some visibility challenges that they're trying to remedy at this time. But we did consult with legal, and because it was posted 24 hours beforehand and that they are able to see it on their end, that it's still considered fine for our board meeting, that we can continue with our meeting today. Our March retreat, we have secured a space at the CEA on Oak Street, and we're working with the vice chair, Karen and Luke, on that agenda and information. It's going to be the regular date, so we don't have to change the date. And we are just looking at the time frame based on what we would like to learn about, discuss as we move forward into the year. Let me see. Education Committee, so updates there. We met with Dr. Ritchie and I, and Karen met with Senator McCrory, Corey, and Representative Leeper to discuss this legislative session. They said they would need their legislation topics by February in order for them to put them in with the public participation in March. We asked if LPDC could have a special meeting to get on their agenda sooner, and we were told that that probably would not happen. Thus, we've put out the request to them to forward all of our legislative items from this meeting that get approved to the Ed Committee pending approval of SBE in March. This would allow them to have public hearings. So we're waiting to hear back on whether or not that's something that we are allowed to do as part of our work as a board. Meeting videos, be aware that as part of the technical difficulties, Karen has put in a request with IT to assist. Our last regulations meeting was clearly being recorded on the screen, but it did not actually back up, as well as our December 8th board meeting. So IT is looking into why that happened, because it was, just like you can see there now, live red recording, and the actual video did not pull back. So we want to make sure that we are taking notes today, and we have Natasha here to help with that. So thank you so much, Natasha, for taking notes for our minutes to ensure that we have accurate information and records. So we appreciate that. Regulations process. We have met with representatives from OPM, Karen and I, as well as the regulations department, and asking questions and beginning to the process of getting things ready for the State Board of Education meeting, where our first kind of batches are going to be hopefully approved on Wednesday, and that way we can actually start that regulatory process. For those of you joining us new, as I said, my autonomous board, anything that we approve goes to the State Board of Education's Legislative Policy and Development Committee, and then from there it goes to the State Board of Education's agenda, and once they approve it, then it moves to the legislator or the regulatory process. So it's a little bit of a path to get there. So we are getting there on Wednesday. So I'll be at the State Board of Education meeting presenting that work to them, and hopefully those things get approved, and then anything moving forward, obviously. So we have met with them. The one kind of outstanding question that I'm hoping to get an answer to as well, that we're waiting on, is who is the sponsoring organization that actually signs off on this. We are a semi-autonomous board, but we kind of fall under SDE. We kind of don't fall under SDE. So kind of getting clarification from a legal standpoint on who it is that's actually going to be signing off on these to get put through the regulatory process as the sponsoring agency for these regulations. We believe that it's SBE/SDE. We want to just make sure that is accurate before we get started in the process. So thank you to Karen and Laura Stefan for working to figure these things out with us. We appreciate it. All right, I think that is it for those. And then regulations ad hoc. I think, Kristen, you have some exciting news for the board.
Yes. Okay. So the regulations ad hoc committee has finished going through all of the sunsetting regulations and come up with draft language for either their amendments or allowing them to sunset. We also identified a large number of regulations that should have been sunset because they still refer to provisional certification, or ones that needed other edits as we were going through. So our ad hoc committee is functionally done with this work until the other group working on program approval and the initial certification has kind of wrapped up theirs. So that was our good news to share. We finished up last week, but looking forward to having more meetings soon once the other groups are done with their end. So when the program approval team and the initial certification starts to have their language in order, they're going to be bringing those back to the regulations ad hoc committee. So we'll get to have an encore. We'll get to meet again. So thank you.
And it's been a heavy lift. So to give you a sense of who is on the regulations ad hoc, it's myself, Kristen, Margaret, Sarah, Patrice, Cynthia Ritchie, and Catherine. And it has been a lift, and Kristen's really been working really well with our legal support, Emma, on getting so many of these things done in a timely manner that we have to present. And you can refer to the regulations tracker that was shared as part of the material drop, so you can really see it. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom of that, there's some additional information of the number of regulations that we also recommended to repeal or sunset, in addition to the ones that were already sunsetting. So it's been quite a lift, and we really appreciate the work they have done. So thank you so much. Kudos to all of you and the work that you have done. We appreciate you. All right, next on our agenda, we see all the chats in there. Great work. Thank you all for the kind remarks for the group. Absolutely, absolutely. All right, and then we have projects. I'm not sure if Sepal is on the line or not, with Karen being out. I'm not sure if they received the link, but maybe just if they are on, a quick program approval update.
Yeah, actually, Tong, I think is waiting to be let in. Do you see him in the waiting room?
Natasha, do you
I
see
not see
him?
him in the waiting room. He's not in the lobby. Let's
Okay.
see.
That's
Did we
okay.
have him sign out and sign back in? Because I had to do that earlier today as well.
Yeah, I can tell him, but I can just quickly give an update while
Okay.
we're waiting on that. So we have been working with the members of the program approval working group, which is Mel, Catherine, and Jen, and Kristen is also joining in her role as the regulatory ad hoc working group lead. And the group together has identified the members of the core working group that we talked about last time we met that will be sort of steering a lot of the work on the regulations. So those members have been identified, and the folks on the CERT board who are on the program approval working group have reached out to them and invited them to join the core working group. They have also started to identify and reach out to folks who will be supporting the work on the endorsement specific content areas. So that is also underway. We are aiming to convene the core working group as early as next week to kick off the work. And then we expect that we'll be meeting very regularly with that core group as we move through the initial stages of this process. So I would expect by the time we have this meeting next time, we will have more to say about the discussions to date, but that is where we are right now. And Liz, I don't know if I think Liz is on. Is there anything that I missed that you
I'm
wanted
here.
to add?
No, but I would say the same thing, of course, to Mel, Jen, Kristen, and Catherine.
Thank you. All right. Does anyone have any questions about that before we move on? All right. Margaret, has there been any meetings since? Oh, Hamish. Hey, Hamish is on as well. So Natasha, if you can go ahead and add that to our attendance. Hamish, go ahead. Can someone change his status? Natasha for Hamish.
Hello, I don't have, that was my only question. Can
Oh.
I talk somehow? No questions at the moment, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Hamish. Sorry about that. All right. And all right, Margaret, has there been any meetings since our December meeting about the birth to grade 3 continuation work?
Yes, the group has been meeting and they are doing similar to what I reported in the last meeting, starting to work backwards around what competencies teachers need to have in pocket for that endorsement. So it is interesting because we're trying really hard not to stick into this is what always has been, so this is where we have to start place of business. And I think that it's been really positive so far. CPRL's been doing some support as well. So I think it's moving along very well.
Perfect, thank you. So Natasha, it looks like Elsa Batista may need the link resent to her as well as Shannon Merriman. Thank you. All right, looks like Shannon is here, but she needs to have her audio and video turned on or switched her status. All right, Shannon, I see your hand is raised. Maybe not. All right.
Yeah, I just wanted to get in. Thank you. I'm all set.
Yep. Thank you. So we have Shannon in. I think we're just waiting on Elsa and the deputy commissioner. We're just in the updates phase, so we haven't gotten into the meat and potatoes of our deeper conversations around action items. So thank you. So we just have it listed as presentations as a placeholder, but there are no presentations as we kind of discussed at the December meeting to ensure that we had enough time to really get to the action items of this meeting. All right, with that said, let's get into it. We're going to start off with our action items, and it's going to be our regulations batches. And I believe it's batch, what are we up to? 6 and 7 or 7 and 8 now? 6 and 7. 6, 7. Okay, go ahead, Kristen.
All right, everyone. So bringing it on home. We have already gone through Regulation 412A at a previous meeting, but a thing you might remember is that because 412A has this transcript experience pathway, and we really wanted to make sure that didn't fall short, we advanced Regulation 412A already. This is about the conditions of issuance for initial educator certification. We made no major changes except updating language to be more inclusive. But then when we get down to 412B, we made more overarching changes. So because Public Act 2441 changed the initial certificate to be 10 years in length, there were some pretty significant changes in 412B, and this is the first new thing of the day. Right. So first off, we're changing the initial certificate length from years ago, it was 1 year, but now it's going to be 10. This may be extended for good cause by the finding of the commissioner or commissioner's designee. That language of commissioner's designee does show up pretty regularly in the rest of the regulations, and it's referring to whomever the commissioner designates to do this work, and it's usually a staff, the staff at the Department of Education. This last line in red, upon the request of the assessment team reviewing such person's performance, is taken directly from the Public Act. So it is bringing the language up to date to match what's in legislation. Section 2 was removed because an applicant who held this interim initial educator certificate of less than 1 year doesn't really apply anymore now that the initial is 10 years long. An interim initial has its own separate section in the regulations. When it says, as otherwise provided in subsection 405, that's a section about assessments, and 427, that's about reissuances. So it's saying that your 10-year certificate is valid for 10 years unless there's assessment concerns or reissuance concerns. In C, we updated the language to be a little bit more flexible for the future. So where it says best assessment, we've agreed to replace it with beginning educator induction program. So obviously best has become team now, but in the event that that mentorship program, that onboarding program for new educators ever changes names again, we'll have regulations that are kind of durable. This beginning educator induction program is going to be, as a definition, put into the definitions at the front of the regulations anyways, so that, future versions of this board know what we're referring to. Do I have any questions on Regulation 412?
Right, seeing none, we can move to the next one. Thank you, Kristen.
I would ask that 413 we approve conditionally because there is a legislative proposal to come in a little bit. But essentially, there's 2 ways in which you can get an interim educator certificate, either because you're missing an assessment or that you're missing coursework. And there was this strange mismatch between the 2 reasons. So before, if you were missing an assessment, then you had 1 year and then legislation made it 3 years and it couldn't be renewable. But if you were getting coursework, it was 1 year and it could be renewed up to 2 times. So this new regulation, the edits make it more uniform. Whether you're missing assessments or coursework, you have 3 years non-renewable to essentially meet those requirements. So to start off, A1 is going to be about if you're missing assessments, you have 3 years in order to get your assessments passed, and you can apply for this interim educator certificate if you've um, successfully completed your EPP program, except for completing your assessments, or if you've come from another state, um, or if you have graduated from another state's alternate route to certification program. So then the part where we would need the legislative proposal to pass is the interim educator certificate with coursework deficiency. Now, this one is especially important because this would be, your people that are missing your course in special education or your survey course in US history. And there's a lot of reasons people may not be able to get a course done in 1 year. So for instance, if I had completed my EPP and I have everything ready to go except my course in US history, and it's April, I might not be able to get into the spring semester, and now I'm not certified to teach in the fall, right? For the 3 years, this would still require them to go finish their coursework, right? And once they do finish their coursework, they'd be eligible for their initial certificate. So people that have the coursework deficiency usually fall into missing the course in special education. So for instance, if you came in from out of state and they didn't require that special education course and you're getting that coursework, you come from another country and you don't have that survey course in US history because, why would you? Right? Like most other countries aren't going to make you take a survey course in US history. Or the third category is if you're in one of the vocational technical schools, and for them, they may not be getting their bachelor's degree, but they have a certain amount of the 6 credits of semester hours of coursework, and then their course in special education that they need to take in order to become initially certified. So then the conditions of the interim educator certificate, we added that they have to complete their coursework and assessments in their area of deficiency. We cleaned up some of the language because if the holder is serving in a position covered by the expired endorsement, then the coursework is then it's assumed that they are working in the employ of a Board of Education. I do see an error I want to point out, and that is this highlighted word endorsement is supposed to be returned. Otherwise, that sentence doesn't make sense.
Thank you.
Right. And the rest is specifying that as you are holding your interim educator certificate, you're essentially a brand new school employee, right? And if you remember back to your first year teaching, these are going to be educators who are doing all their first classroom management. You're doing the first time you realize that you need to do lesson plans every day, all day. And so in 3, this statement says that you may start the beginning educator induction program. Your Board of Education will likely make you do this, but you may, if you have a Board of Education who's willing to be flexible, delay doing your beginning educator induction program until you finish the coursework, right? So this would be, your new educator, you're working on all your classroom management, you're finishing up your coursework and assessments as you need to, and then when you get your initial certificate, then you must start the beginning educator induction program, right? So that they're not trying to do 3 things at once. And then the last line, just wrapping up removing provisional educator certificate. Do I have any questions on interim educator certificate 413?
No, I don't see any hands at this time, so we want to move to the next.
That's good because there's 16 pages to go. All right. So 419 is just updating the grade ranges for this limited extended authorization for early childhood. And just a reminder to what this is saying if you currently have an elementary cert and you want to temporarily teach early childhood, that you would be able to do so. So it's a limited extended authorization. It's not a new certificate. It's not a cross endorsement, but it's saying that if you, wait, let me make sure I'm not saying this backwards. I was saying it backwards. Sorry. So this is you currently teach early childhood and you want to teach elementary education. I said it backwards. So one more time, you currently teach early childhood and you would like to teach elementary, that you could temporarily teach for up to 1 school year while you're finishing your elementary education coursework and paperwork. 421 is the DSAP, the Durational Shortage Area Permit. Now, some of this you have already seen because we had done 422 reissuance already. So the DSAP is a 1-year permit that allows you to teach in lieu of having a full certification. We updated the language to match statute. So this says that you have to hold a bachelor's degree unless a bachelor's degree is not required in the certification area. That would be your vocational technical teachers. So if a vocational technical teacher needed to go under a DSAP, then they wouldn't need to have a bachelor's degree because they don't need a bachelor's degree for their certificate. In order to have a DSAP, you have to be enrolled in a planned program of study and complete at least 12 semester hours of your coursework. Any questions on DSAP or the limited extended authorization for early childhood?
Jenny Graves?
Just had a quick question. With the extension to start team, does that mean that as like an early career educator would now have 3 years of teaching before they started the team process? I know that I know as team is right now, it's not actually a great support system and more of a burden for our early career educators, but I do know that they are revising team to be more supportive. My only concern in waiting the 3 years is that folks who really need a different level of support or more mentorship now has to wait the 3 years. So I just wanted to know your thoughts on that.
Our thoughts is leaving it as May is that it would give more flexibility. So if a district saw a teacher really needed to participate in team to get that support, then they would be allowed to. Whereas if a teacher was, really, getting extra help for tutoring or finishing significant amounts of coursework, that they'd be able to focus on that and then do team when they were ready. So I think the wording in that regulation of leaving it as May is a little bit more permissive, and that this would allow the districts and teachers to work together to figure out when team would make sense, because we know that they have to do it. It's just, for some teachers, it may make sense to do it right away. And for some, it might make sense to wait until they finish their coursework or assessments.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Kristen. Any other questions at this time? All right. 15 more to go.
We got this, especially because 423, only 423A was sunset, and our recommendation should be to allow it to sunset. Notice that 423A was only valid from August 1st, 1998 to June 30th, 1999. So it was a really good 8-month period for when these regulations were in order, so we shouldn't be carrying them around anymore. And then if we scroll all the way down to B, on and after July 1999, B stands. So our recommendation is, yes, let A sunset. It has been irrelevant for more than 20 years. Let B stand. And for that, if we're considering in the future taking a closer look at coaching, then we'd probably want to get CIAC involved. We'd probably want to look at this with more depth than how we're going right now. I am noticing there is a section I think I'm missing. So let me write something down really quick. Madam Chair, with your permission, can I pull up a separate document? I realized that there was a regulation that our ad hoc committee approved, but I forgot to include in this document.
Yes.
So while I'm pulling that up, essentially the regulation that I'm noticing is not here, is a regulation about coaching that was brought up by our certification staff. And what it is if you are getting a temporary coaching permit, then you need to have a certificate of your CPR and first aid that's not expired within 1 year. So that means you could have a perfectly valid CPR and first aid certificate, but then not get approval for this permit because your certificate expires in 5 months instead of 13 months, right? So let me find that regulation. Thank you everyone for being so patient. Okay, the section is 424. Desk. So section 424, we would be changing it to your certificate has to have a year left on it, to as long as you hold an unexpired standard first aid course and CPR certification, then you can get your temporary emergency coaching permit. Do I have any questions on 424?
All right, I see Kaylin and then Bob.
I just want to point out that this is a barrier for our districts. It was originally written this way to have it be valid within a year back in 1998 because they just wanted them to transition right to the 5-year within that year, and they wanted to be able to cut out the need to request additional documentation. But unfortunately, this just created a barrier for some of our districts, especially those who are looking to hire a coach immediately, where now they got to find a class if it's just not valid within that year. So it's definitely a concern we hear from the districts. So that's why we just wanted to, just modify that language, that as long as they have a CPR and first aid card that the district accepts, mind you, they're the ones at the end of the day that manage all their CEUs, and this application itself for the emergency temporary permit comes directly from the district. So we just wanted to try to get rid of some roadblocks along the way that have presented a challenge.
Bob?
Yeah, I deal with a lot of these also. And I just want, I'm not sure what I'm missing, but I don't understand really what the difference is for the documents that are required for the temporary emergency versus just the 5-year coaching permit. And I don't know, I see you may have the answer to that, Kayla. I'd love to hear it.
So
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Kaylin.
Absolutely. So the 5-year permit is designated for our educators who hold full certification. So that wouldn't be a temporary authorization like a DSAP or a long-term sub. But if they held at minimum an initial educator certificate, then they would only be required to then verify the completion of the Module 15 concussion course, which is there's only one approved provider through the CIAC. That's from the State Board of Ed approved, and a valid CPR and first aid card. Those temporary coaching permits.
Kaylin,
Sorry,
I think
I
you
just
yeah,
went
muted
mute. Sorry
yourself
about
by
that.
accident.
Those temporary coaching permits are for those coaches who may not work in the education field. There was regulatory and statutory requirements back many years ago that required what's called an approved coaching course. Now the CIAC offers a 45-hour clock hour course, and then some of our institutions in the state of Connecticut also offer approved coaching courses. So for those individuals who are coming from outside of the field, who do not hold certification, they would need to complete this coaching course as well as Mod 15 and CPR first aid and verify that they've at least graduated from high school. The emergency permit was put into place and it comes at the request of a district. So therefore that emergency permit is only issued to that specific district, but it's for those candidates who haven't been able to complete the course. Okay, so right now, the way it stands is if a district finds someone in its emergency situation, they can, obviously pending background checks and an application process, they can, start coaching without the course, and that permit can be renewed one time. Okay, to that specific district, and part of the renewal process will be evidence of registration in said course. So they basically have 2 years to complete that approved coaching course to be able to then transition to the 5-year permit.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Kaylin. Thank you, Bob. All right. Seeing no other questions at this time, we can continue to move through.
All right, so let me switch the sharing. Okay, so we did coaching. We would add in 424, the temporary emergency coaching requirement, and then get on to 426, adult education authorization. So what we had to do on this one is really do a lot of cross-checking 594, 599, 604. These are the initial certification requirements for adult authorization. So it's just referring to other sections later in the document. Because section 404, which is about assessment, no longer has a subsection A and B. As you remember, we removed the Praxis 1 language from section 404. So now it's just about the content area tests. That this is just streamlining it and making sure that everything is cohesive, that all of the regulations that this section is referring to still make sense. So 426, we would want to reinstate with these updates. Okay, so for reissuance, this is an example of, if someone is saying like, why are we, how is this simplifying the regulatory process? Section 427, it starts with 427A and goes all the way down to X. It had so many different instances and cross-references, and if you need to do this, do that. There were X sections, so I don't know how many that is, 20-something sections. But we were able to simplify it down a little bit. So let's go over what the new reissuance process looks like. Some of this is simplified just because initial educator certificate now is so long, it's 10 years, right? So in A, 427A, this is a person who forgot to reapply for reissuance of their certificate. This person held a valid certificate, but they accidentally allowed it to lapse. Well, what you do is you apply for a new certificate. That's what 427A says. You used to hold a valid teaching certificate, you accidentally let it lapse. B is you hold or held an initial educator certificate, but you need additional time in order to get to professional educator certificate. You know, maybe you taught for 10 years, but you haven't gotten your master's degree yet, or hopefully in the 10 years you've completed TEAM. But this is actually matching Public Act 2441, which specifies that this is the process, that you appeal to the commissioner or commissioner's designee for an extension of time in order to get your professional educator certificate. And the last regulation that we're going to review today is 615, so we're going to go see that one in the future. C says you hold an initial educator certificate, but you have not served under it. Right? So that means you have a certificate, but maybe you moved out of state and you moved back. Maybe you decided that you were going to be a stay-at-home mom and now you're coming into work. But since you haven't worked under it at all, you don't have the time. You can't have possibly served for 5 years. You haven't served for any years. So because you have not taught at all, you apply to the commissioner or commissioner's designee for a full 10-year reissuance of the initial certificate. D is actually a new section. And this one, I would ask that it gets approved conditionally as long as our legislative proposal goes through. So one of the things that the reissuance language kind of is a challenge for is if you have your certificate and you have served some time, now you can't get reissued an initial educator certificate. But there could be instances where a teacher is unable to move up to professional and also unable to reapply for a reissuance. So let's say that, I get my initial educator certificate, I take 8 years off to be a stay-at-home parent, and then in year 8, I then serve for 2 years. It is impossible for me at that time to be able to take in 2 years, do 5 years worth of teaching, what's required to get a professional educator certificate. So what D says is if you have served under it for fewer than 10 years, you can get reissued the initial certificate for 10 years minus the time you served. So if I served for 2 years, my new initial certificate would be 8 years. This will allow them to have the time to get either the master's degree, finish TEAM, do any of the coursework that's required, give them the time in order to get their professional certificate. Since that was a lot so far, are there any questions on the reissuance categories so far?
Dr. Ritchie?
Thank you. And thank you for all this work, Kristen. Could you move it back up to C, please? I am just curious, what is the criteria or process for a person in this situation to appeal to the commissioner or commissioner's designee?
Julianne?
If a person holds a valid certificate, so it hasn't expired, and they have not served under it, they simply submit the application and they're going to get another 10-year certificate. It's not really, when it says you can apply to the commissioner, you're basically submitting a renewal application. The only time we run into issues is if a certificate is expired, if there's a lapse in between, if something wasn't met. But if I hold my initial, let's say I get my initial, I get my first 10-year initial and I never served because I won the lottery and I'm traveling the world, and then 10 years later I'm like, oh, it's time to renew, I can get another 10-year. There are no requirements if you apply prior to the expiration date.
So should it say may apply for renewal directly to your department, or should it?
Right. Well, anybody, when anybody time you apply, you're applying, but it's it's under the authority of the commissioner that we're issuing anything. So it says may apply
see.
for reissuance. And so it's,
Okay,
Reissue.
it says the same thing. It's just a little more formal. Okay.
yeah, it is, but
Yeah, thank you.
that's what we mean by it. And Kristen, before we leave this document, there are two previous points I want to, it's not a reissuance, that we can come back to at the end, possibly. Thank you.
Thank you both.
Yeah, and we had a pretty good discussion about what is meant by commissioner or commissioner's designee, but A is an example where that language kind of happens. So you're applying for a reissuance through the commissioner or commissioner's designee, which is meant to mean like the certification staff who are tasked with doing this. Good question. Now, there's a lot of gray in these sections, and I don't want you to think that we didn't spend a huge amount of time discussing this. We definitely did, and the certification staff were really helpful. They pulled in their other expert colleagues to make sure that we were paying attention to all the details we needed to. Some of this language in gray refers to the best assessment. And the challenge back in the day when the initial certificate was only 1 year long is that you wouldn't have been able to complete best if you didn't serve the full year. So a lot of these sections that are highlighted in gray that we're looking to delete are going to be ones that assumed the initial certificate was only 1 year and therefore you couldn't complete best. But now, if you've been teaching for 10 years, you will have completed team, right? So a lot of these are going to be kind of made irrelevant by the fact that the law has extended the time in order to get your initial certification from initial to professional. You have 10 years instead of 1, right? So where we jump in again is 90-day certificate. And so with 90-day certificates, a challenge could be that you might serve under it for 90 days, but your assignment might not be full-time, or you might not serve for a whole 90 days for whatever reason. Now, the challenge with a 90-day certificate is you need to successfully complete your 90 days and have your recommendation from your superintendent in order to move from the 90-day certificate to initial. So what E says is that if you either had a part-time assignment or served less than 90 days and you can't meet the requirements of initial because of how you were hired, then you reapply for reissuance and you can get another 90-day certificate. And a thing to note here is we left in this language when an employing agent of the Board of Education makes a written request for issuance, right? So this is likely a teacher who's been doing a great job working under their 90-day cert, but the math isn't mathing. They may only have 40 days left of the school year, and you need the first 50 days of the next school year in order to finish your 90. And upon completion of their 90, they then go apply for their initial certification. Now, we are keeping the language for provisional educator certificate here because there are still people with provisional educator certificates out there. And, you know, without having the numbers in front of us, it is possible that there is still a person with a provisional educator certificate who has not yet served under it, right? Now, the law says if you don't meet the requirements to move from provisional to professional, you get reissued an initial educator certificate. So that's what we went with, is matching the current law. So if you have not served under it, then we can't reissue you a provisional like we did with initial, but we can reissue you your initial educator certificate and give you another 10 years to get up to professional. Similarly, like I said, G is almost precisely the language from Public Act 2441. If you hold a provisional educator certificate, but you're not eligible to advance to professional, you get reissued initial educator certificate because we're not reissuing provisionals anymore. How are we doing? Do I have any questions yet?
Not seeing any raised hands.
So the deleted sections, P, Q, R, S, are all irrelevant now because we are not reissuing provisional certification, which leaves H, the last one in this section, which is saying a person who holds a professional educator certificate who applies for continuation of this certificate gets their professional certificate continued for 5 years. That's the current practice. Our professional certs are 5 years.
Julianne?
Our professional certificates are 10 years, so it should say they can apply and be to have a continuation of 10 years, not 5.
My bad. Okay, so that is 427 age. 10 years. Thank you. Sorry, I'm just checking a number, and then I'll be good to move on. All right, and the remainder of that language is all made irrelevant by the fact that we are not doing CEUs anymore. As you know, CEUs were the continuing education credits that teachers used to need to take annually. And then when they went to apply for a professional or continue professional, they needed to show evidence of CEUs through the Department of Education. All right, so moving on to 476 validity of certificates. This particular certificate, or sorry, this particular regulation was sunset by the Public Act, but for the validity of any of the other certificates, we didn't remove any of those regulations. All of those were ones that we had agreed to reinstate as written. So there's no needed to change the time period. It's endorsed pre-K through 12. There's no changes to this one. It's saying that in order to teach in a bilingual program, you need to be endorsed to teach bilingual. You need to hold an certificate. Okay, so for 484, the professional educator certificate requirements for remedial reading and language arts, as well as the comprehensive special education, those we decided to put in this language where it is keeping, they're referring back to 417, the professional educator certificate language. And the reason our ad hoc committee decided to keep it this way is that when we were looking at the originally proposed language for dyslexia, it had a number of stipulations that would be really challenging to determine for professional educators. And what I mean by that is, let's say that I'm a professional educator in comprehensive special education. I've been teaching 20 years and I'm applying to reissue my professional certification, right? Some of the requirements include needing to engage in another advised practicum, right? It included going back and doing additional testing and coursework. There's the Department of Dyslexia and Reading Disabilities is still looking at ways on how they want to enforce and determine whether we're meeting the dyslexia requirements in law. But on our end, we're not sure how they mean to go about doing that. So while we're waiting for their determination on how they want to determine whether people have met these categories, we thought it would be safe to let it refer back to the requirements in 417. And as a reminder, the requirements for 417 are that you teach for 5 years, you complete team, and you get a master's degree and any other coursework that is specified under the regulation for your certification. So this is saying that you need to meet those 3 requirements: teach for 5 years, right? Finish team, and then get your master's degree. For 615, this is the extension of time to complete certification requirements that I mentioned earlier. This red language is almost directly from the Public Act that established it. So what it's saying is that the initial educator certificate may be extended for an additional year if you're trying to move up to professional, as long as there's a good cause. So if you need an additional year to finish your master's degree or finish, hopefully not finish team, but finish your master's degree, that you get an additional year. And again, the commissioner or commissioner's designee is going to mean applying to the department. Seeing no questions, these last regulations, 424 through 606, these are going to be regular. Oh, there's my 424. So I was right. I just included elsewhere. And the reason I said it in this other section is that all of the ones previously that we discussed are in the sunsetting category. So we were required to figure those out before the deadline coming up in the summer. But 424, for instance, this was a suggestion that was made because, it was a noted need from districts. 433, the early childhood, was one of those we had originally set aside because we wanted to have a more discussion about like the dyslexia legislation. So 433, we made the same determination that we did with the earlier ones, saying that for now they can meet the requirements in section 417. And if ODRD has other ways they want to enforce that later on, then we can go through this process again, but we don't want to overstep their authority, right? And the other one that meets that requirement is later on. The reading and language arts consultant was the 4th certificate affected by that dyslexia legislation that we set aside. Okay, so for trade and industrial occupational subjects at comprehensive high schools, we had set aside all the vocational technical regulations for their professional educator certificate. And one of the reasons we set those aside is that the Public Act requires a master's degree in order to move up to professional. But this group of educators was never required to earn a master's degree. So instead, they were always required to show 18 semester hours of credits related to the preparation in vocational technical education and 12 credits of planned professional education. So we wanted to keep sections A and B saying that they still need to do the 18 and 12 for their coursework. But the last section where it's going around and listing all these very specific and outdated requirements for what those 12 semester hours of preparation look like. If they're in a planned program of preparing teachers to be vocational technical, then we felt that we no longer needed to keep some of these in gray. And for instance, to show how out of date they are, one of them is audiovisual education, including the ability to use and adapt to teaching materials and aids. Things like, I think the psychology of the disadvantage is probably not how we would put that now, right? So if they're already enrolled in a program of study that's preparing teachers, along with their 18 hours of credit, that it no longer needed to be that specified down to the coursework level, the granular level.
I think, Bob, go ahead. Actually, I think you're probably going to say what I was going to say. Go ahead.
Why don't you say what you were going to say, and we'll see if we said the same thing.
I was going to say that I think that Kristen, you had reached out to Bob and Shannon on these two to get that input and that understanding for these particular certificates. So really appreciate that. We're very fortunate to have the many lenses that we do on the board, and that we're able to tap into those lenses for this work. So I wanted to say thank you to the two of them for that work with you. Go ahead, Bob.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, you're welcome. I'm having a hard time seeing that, but I just want to make sure that the 18 and the 12 are totally fine, and we should not be prescriptive with the 12. However, if I heard correctly, it doesn't have to necessarily be an educator preparation program, but the courses have to align with, I guess, the needs of the district, so to speak. I'm not sure how to state that. Maybe Julianne has a thought there, but we don't just want our teachers. These are technical education, vocational teachers, just going and taking this education course or that education course, because there are courses that relate more directly to the work that they're expected to do within our system.
Thank you, Bob. Julianne, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to, so the way it's written out is you need 18 in vocational and 12 in professional. We say completing a planned program, but that means like it's a plan with, because these are endorsements that don't require planned programs. These are endorsements that don't require a bachelor's degree necessarily. So by planned program, it really means the planned program, like the district that they're working says, hey, you need 12 credits in professional education. I want you to take a classroom management course. I want you to take a secondary reading course. So it's, again, the 12, it has to be specific to professional education, but rather than having the regulations say, oh, you need a course in audiovisual, letting the district say, what 12 credits in professional education do I feel are appropriate for this particular educator?
Should that be explicitly stated that, to include the district plan or not? I don't know, but I can just see, I can see how that goes.
Yeah, I don't know if they, again, because if you're also moving, you might be now with some of the vocationals for 098, you could be moving from district to district, whereas 090, you're going to be within the VT system. So that's where I think if you say district, then it's not going to be applicable for 098 because they don't have to be in the same district the whole time. So I think I'd be hesitant to say approved by the district. I mean, ideally, it should be approved by the district when they're taking their, I mean, most of the educators, in my experience, they kind of ask, what am I supposed to take? And so they'll ask the district or they'll ask the state, what's needed. And so I don't think you necessarily need to say approved by the district. That's my 2 cents.
But that is the intent. Yeah, okay.
I think this effort to move away from the prescriptive component of it allows that flexibility, right? Which we're looking for in modernizing as well. So thank you. Again, thank you, Shannon and Bob and Kristen and SDE for working on these to firm them up a bit for us.
And actually, a thing you'll notice is that in the other vocational technical section, it has just the 18-12 split and doesn't get into that prescriptive bit, right? So in regulation 513, that's occupational subjects, 518, that's trade subjects, and health occupations in 528, you'll see that 18 12 split, where it says, you know, you've completed a minimum of 12 semester hours of credit at your approved institution. So to sum up the vocational technical part, it refers back to you need to meet the requirements in 417, except that you're not required to earn a master's degree. Applicants will present evidence of this instead. All right. 571 we've already discussed because we are waiting for ODRD about reading and language arts consultant. And the next few were set aside because there was a concern if we leave this requirements saying only whatever it says in section 417 for professional cert, does that mean an administrator doesn't have to do additional coursework? Does that mean a superintendent of schools doesn't have to do additional coursework? But what we went back and kind of drilled down and looked at was all of the additional coursework for department chair, superintendent of schools, and school business administrator is already laid out in the initial certificate section for those certifications. So in order to become a superintendent, they have to do X, Y, and Z was already laid out in the initial certification for superintendent of schools. So there weren't any additional requirements in order to become professionally certified as superintendent of schools, except to complete the time, right? So to continue their work for 5 years. I think a thing we could consider for these certificates, these professional certificates, is that the intermediate admin or supervisor, department chairperson, superintendent of schools, and school business admin, they previously only needed to work for 3 years under that certificate in order to become professionally certified. Whereas now the law says 5 years. I don't know if that's something we want to tackle in regulation or wait to see how it plays out in legislation. Because essentially, if we refer back to the requirements in section 417, this is moving the amount of time that they need to serve as an intermediate administrator in order to move from initial to professional. They previously had to work for 3 years to move from initial to professional, and now they have to move from 5 years because the law has changed.
So the question to add that in, 5 years, like that prescriptive, but if the law changes, then we would have to go back in, or what is the ask here?
No, it would be, do we want to keep it 3 years? Or do we want to move it up to 5? And I think one of the challenges is before they had an initial certification time and then a provisional time and then a professional time. So that might be a challenge for us to fix and take another look at in the future, because that would also require changing legislation.
Dorothea?
So can you explain a little bit more? If this is put forward, does this become statute and legislation then?
Yeah, so it's already in legislation. So when the Public Act put in the new pathways to become professional, it didn't make any exceptions. So it didn't make any exceptions for vocational. It didn't make any exceptions for your other certification areas, like in your school business administrator certification area. So if we leave this how it is, it already matches the law.
I'm just trying to understand a little bit more about the 3 years versus the 5 years. So if you're saying that what would match the law currently would be 3 years?
Would be 5.
So
I
we're
thought you-
stating,
I thought currently that to be like a school administrator, you just needed the 3 years.
Right. So the practice or how it's been for years is you needed 3 years. So you would teach under your initial certification, then you get your provisional for, sorry, I have it up in front of me. You hold your provisional for 3 years and then
And at that
Mm,
point, you were
second.
able to
Yeah. So
sue
originally, so originally the professional certificate for school business administrator, for instance, says that you've completed not less than 30 school months of successful service under the provisional interim educator or provisional teaching certificate for school business admin. But what the law currently says is, and you need 5 years teaching under that certificate in order to become professional. So it's where the law is now different than the regulation. And it's, do we want to change the law to put in these exceptions? Or do we want to write the regulations to match the law?
Thanks.
Julianne?
I just wanted to point out that, so new law, we have new statute that now says you need 50 months of experience under the initial or provisional. So regardless of what the regulations say, the regulations may say something, but the statute already says it's going to be 50 months. Our current regulations for these professionals say that you have to have completed your 30 months under the provisional and complete certain coursework. And so I don't think we need to address the months because that's already in statute. You might say to receive a professional certificate, in addition to experiential requirements, the candidate has to complete certain coursework. I mean, you could say that because that's where the difference is really just in the coursework, not in the experience. Right now, again, as she was kind of indicating before, you would work under an initial and then you would work under a provisional for 3 more years. But in the end, you still did 5 years. It's just now it's saying 5 years. That 5 years could be under an initial because we now have no provisional. So it's a combination of 5 years, whether it's under initial and provisional or just initial or just provisional. If you came in and got a provisional from another state, it's just 5 years of experience. The only one that needs to have the specific coursework listed, because superintendent, you already have to have a master's plus 30 graduate credits. Whereas the 092, you come in and you need a master's plus 18, you need to have 12 more to go to professional. And so that's why that one still has language about actual coursework.
Okay, so that one was 576.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So for that one, just because I'm trying to come up with how we would edit this on the fly. That one has your 18 of semester hours of graduate credit in addition to the master's under initial. So that I see. And then 30 semester hour. Okay, so they need an additional 12 under 576. Okay.
But you want to say they need to have a total of 30 credits beyond the master's, because let's say they come in through enhanced reciprocity and they only have a master's. They don't have the master's plus 18. Those people still need to have 30 graduate credits beyond the master's. So the statute says all you need is a master's, but the requirements for these endorsements are higher than that. So this is why it's going to be specific and say, like, okay, for this one, it's not just a master's, it's a master's plus 30. For 092. Same thing with superintendent. You could come in through enhanced reciprocity and just have a master's. You need a master's plus 30 graduate credits to advance.
I understand, because, what I was looking at was that assuming someone served as an initial educator in Connecticut already, so they would already have those, right? Okay, so I guess a question would be, if someone is coming from another state and they already had their superintendent certificate, would they be issued an initial certificate for Connecticut first?
Yeah, enhanced reciprocity means only gonna come in at the initial level, because to advance to professional, there is no provisional. And to advance to professional, you need 5 years of service in the state of Connecticut. So you could have 30 years of experience in another state. You're still gonna come in at the initial. The trick is if you're coming in through program or experience and transcript review, we're going to look for the coursework. But if you're coming in through enhanced reciprocity, you could, and there are states that issue a superintendent certificate with requiring only a master's. You could come in and only have the master's, you get your initial certificate and you serve for 5 years, but you never do any additional coursework. That's what we don't. We want them to complete the 30 credits, graduate credits, if they haven't already. Sometimes they already have, but if they don't, they should have to meet those 30 graduate credits to move to professional for the admin.
Okay, so 576, we kind of already addressed the not less than 30 semester hours of graduate credit. So I think it needs to say where it says, in addition to meeting the requirements in 417, is that clear enough that those 30 semester hours are beyond the master's degree, or do you think it needs to be edited?
Well, because it says it's 30 credits beyond what the original, having at least 30 graduate credits in addition to meeting the requirements. So if the original requirement is a master's plus 18, then that's the original requirement that we're referring to, and you need to have 30 graduate credits, and which they'll have. But even if they don't have it, then either way, that I hate saying 30 graduate credits, because both of those endorsements require a master's degree. And so even if you're coming in through enhanced reciprocity, we have to identify that you do have the master's degree. So they're going to minimally have the master's degree. So if they do 30 credits beyond the master's, then they're good to go for both the 092 and for the 093.
Good. Okay, so 576 is fine then, because it's saying that in addition. 581, the department chairperson they needed to do a master's degree, and then it has specifications about 6 hours of instructional supervision, 6 hours of curriculum
Specific
development, 6
coursework.
hours, right? And that's all within their initial certificate.
So they're already going to
And
have
then
a
there's,
master's.
yeah, so then they don't need any changes to 518 because they already have the master's and everything else was an initial. 587 for the superintendent, they need their master's degree. But then they also need their 30 semester hours of graduate credit. They'll have served their 80 school months of successful teaching. They'll have done their 30 school months. So I guess a suggestion for 587 then, because there's no additional coursework a superintendent needs that's not put already under the initial certificate, and anyone coming in from out of state would have to have the initial certificate first. Do you suggest just repeating those repeating that language under 587?
Dorothea?
So I think maybe Juliana could answer that. I had a slightly different question.
Julian, do you want to answer
Oh, yeah, I
Kristen's,
mean,
and then
I-
we'll take Dorothea's?
Okay, yeah, I think again, if you're referring back to what you originally require, because the original requirement is for superintendent is a master's plus 30. So I don't think you need to add in additional coursework, because the initial requirement for superintendent versus professional, the coursework is the same. There's no additional coursework. You need to have it all up front. The 092 is the only one that you can come in with a master's plus 18, and then you have to continue to do more. Department chair, you already had to do the 30 master's, or you already had to have that advanced coursework. So it's really, I think 092 is the one that stands out as being different.
Yeah, I mean, my question was really like what initial means here, because when that section 10, 140, 145D, 417 that we're looking at next, right? That's only for teachers, is that correct? That's not, you're not considering that for superintendents and,
Oh, no, you are. You are. So
because
anyone that is,
yeah, I guess my question there would be, so the proposed options are masters and then micro credentials.
Mm, yes, so we'll
Does
have to
that
discuss.
apply to the superintendents and to 092? Because that's an entirely different thing, right?
Right. So if that one, we have to have like a more robust discussion on. That one was uh, presented as like a starting point, but we haven't drilled down on what the specifics would look like yet. And also, we have already passed, let me pull it up actually. We have already passed through this board a set of regulations that we think would make sense for 417. So actually, this is a good spot where we can just pull it up and refer back to it so that everyone is on the same page. So what our board has already passed is kind of general language for the professional educator certificate that matches the law, but does give a carve out for those vocational technical teachers, right? So this is one of the sections of 417. And it says, in order to become professionally certified, you need to teach for at least 50 school months with these call outs for 596, 601, and 606 being your adult education. Right? Successfully complete TEAM, the beginning educator induction program. Complete a master's degree, except for candidates whose coursework requirements are different because they're laid out separately, and any subject specific requirements as defined in the relevant professional certificate regulation. So this would also go for your superintendent 092s. This would go for your, bilingual teachers. The professional educator certificate language covers everybody that is considered certified teacher in Connecticut, including administrators. So this section A matches the new law where it says the 50 school months. So now you teach for 5 years, then complete TEAM, then the master's degree. And this one is already passed by the board. So our board has decided to do this for now. And I think we still have some discussion to do on if we want to make any changes.
Okay, and that was for these, that's the carve out, the carve outs. Okay, thank you.
That was a good question because then, we haven't looked at 417 in over a month. So those are the 4 requirements in order to move from initial to professional. So that matches the law and it just has those carve outs as we needed them.
Julianne? Thank you for clarifying that, Kristen.
I have one question, and we may have discussed this, but the other ones that jump out to me are school counselor and school psychologist. To obtain that certification, you need the master's under the current regs, it says it doesn't say a master's because that's part of the program, but for school counselors, you need 45 graduate credits. And for school psychologists, you need 60 graduate credits. Now, very often their master's degree is a 60 credit master's. But that's not always the case, or a 45 credit master's. So we have come across people who had a 55 credit master's degree, or specialist degree, and they didn't have the 60 credits and they had to go back and take a few more courses to meet that requirement. So I don't know if we've addressed those separately, but those are 2 areas that also go beyond, kind of like the 092. There's a little more to it.
Right. And so just like the 092, all of those additional requirements are within the initial educator certificate requirement. So under the initial educator for school social work, for instance, it says, you know, in order to get their initial, they already have the master's degree. So since they already have the master's degree, you know, they don't need to do it again in order to go to professional. They've already got it. And they don't have coursework that goes beyond that. So if we look at the professional educator certificate language for school social worker, for instance, the only requirement for them is complete team and serve for 30 months under the current regulations. And now we would be upping that to 50 months to match the law.
That's true for school social worker. They have a master's to start with and they don't need any more. The initial regulations for school psychology say you need a master's and then 45 graduate credits as in addition or as part of. But for school counselor, it just says school counselors need to have a minimum of 30 credits as part of the master's. Whereas again, right now it's 45. So initial is 30. Professional is 45. Initial for school psychology is a master's with at least 45 credits, but professional is 60. So in both of those two cases, the initial requirements are less than the professional requirements unless we keep them that way.
Yeah. So for school counselors, it's 30 months of service and 45 semester hours of graduate credit. But their initial certification is master's degree. Okay, I see what you're saying. So right now, the initial certification requires a master's degree.
Which could be 30 credits. But
which could be 30 credits.
To move to professional, they're supposed to have 45 graduate.
I
And
see
then
Kaylin's hand is up as well. Kaylin, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, it was actually just basically bringing up what Julianne's discussing right now. I also just want to mention too that most of our school counselor programs, as well as school psychologists, have the right amount of credits when they apply at the initial level. There's only a few and far between, and we make sure too, when we're issuing that first initial, that we're looking at that. Because we're going to mark the file that way to make sure that it brings it up in the future. But I would say that for the most part, most school counseling programs at the master's level include 45 credits, and school psychologists the 60, correct? Yeah. So it's usually
it's out of state that sometimes we
get
out
of state that we start to
see it,
see the issues. But that is something, if we're definitely going to keep in place, that is something that we as a bureau can make sure. I mean, we send them letters with their certificates, so they're aware, but we could definitely up that communication too when we're issuing the certificate. That's something that we could definitely do as well.
Yes. So one challenge is I'm pretty sure 558 and 562 the board has already approved to send on to the Legislative and Policy Development Committee. I'm pretty sure we did that in December. So I'd be happy to take a look at it again. I just don't know if we'd be able to get anything as like a draft to change it from them, because Madam Chair, I think we already sent the materials to because they meet on Wednesday. So I don't think we can get a new draft in front of them on Wednesday. But would it be helpful for something like a statement to be made about edits, or to have someone present at the meeting to add to that discussion when they have it?
Sure. Our representation or our support on SDE typically goes to the meetings along with me to address any kind of deeper dives like we're having right now that might occur during the meeting. I think a statement of any edits that we might want to consider might be something to do. And what we could do is we could add that onto our next agenda, any potential edits, and make them aware so that maybe we can get a conditional approval, knowing that we might have some edits coming forward to them.
I think for the material we're doing today, we wouldn't need anything, but they would just need to know that these two items that are on their plate,
Right.
you know, that they should have the additional consideration.
Right. So what I can say to them is that we'd like to add this, and we will have it added for the materials for their next SBE meeting if they conditionally approve it.
I think that works. I mean, like, again, we're not concerned about the Connecticut programs because they certainly are preparing them, you know, they already meet that requirement. I just don't want to have an uneven, I don't want to be like, oh, you did your program out of state. You don't need to have as much coursework as the Connecticut people, because that's no good for our Connecticut institutions, that they're being held to a higher standard to go to a Connecticut school and don't have to make up for it if you went to out of school, out of state. That's all.
That makes sense.
All right. I think we're in the stretch here.
I think we are. Okay. So our last 3 professional educator certs were for high school credit diploma, external diploma, and non-credit mandated program, as well as TESOL, teaching English to non-English speaking adults. So with these 3 certificates had not required a graduate degree. They had originally required 30 semester hours of graduate or undergraduate credit in place of a master's degree. So this is one of those instances where, you know, the law currently doesn't have a carve out for adult ed, but these 3 adult ed certs never were required to get a graduate degree. They were instead required to get 30 semester hours, but those hours could be undergraduate or graduate. So that's for the last 3 certifications on screen.
All right. Any questions about those? All right. I think we're ready for a motion, Kristen.
Okay,
Oh,
so I
Oh,
move.
hold on. I see
Oh, sure.
Julianne's hand up in the.
There were 2 points I wanted to go back to that were earlier in the document.
Oh, yeah.
One is under the conditions of interim educator certificate, where it talked about, it was number 4, for those who hold the interim certificate upon meeting requirements for initial shall be issued retroactive to the issuance date of the interim certificate. My concern is if you had an interim certificate, you had it for 3 years, and then it expired because you didn't take the tests or finish the coursework, and then a year later you took the test, we would not be able to go retroactive to the issuance date of the original certificate because you didn't meet the requirements then. So it would be retroactive to the date that they applied is really the way we would do that. Like if it hadn't expired, then that no harm, no foul. But if it's expired, we can't, and you didn't meet requirements, you can't go back and issue a certificate for a period of time when they didn't meet requirements. So you can't be retroactive to the issuance date of the interim. It would be issued retroactive to the date that all requirements were met, you know, kind of thing.
Yes. Okay. So are you looking to change this last sentence to read, such certificate shall be reissued retroactive to the date all requirements were met?
Yeah.
Okay, and that is 413 B4.
And there was one other one. Kaylin, do you remember what the other one was? There were 2 that we were going to talk about.
So while we have you here on that last one, this is something the ad hoc committee kind of discussed at length, and we were going back and forth. When you say issued retroactive to the issuance date when all requirements were met, does that mean the requirements of the initial certification?
Yeah, so if you were issued an interim certificate, you had, at that point, you had met all requirements except for a US history course, or except for, usually it's a praxis test or something. All the requirements except for that. So, and then it expires, and then, so the new initial date is going to correspond to the date that all tests, all requirements for that certificate were met. So now it's been another year, it expired, and a year later I passed the test. I'm like, oh, I'm ready to come back. Now we can give you a new certificate. The effective, you apply for a new one and you've passed the test, that would be your new effective date. So we can't retroactive to a time when you did not meet the requirements.
Right, because I mean, the
Carolyn
language
may
in
have a
black
better
is
language.
yeah, because the language in black is the current language from the regulations. So that is what it says for now. But one of the things we were considering is,
I
that
guess because
means
it says hold. So it says those who hold. So it's not held. If you held, then that would be different. So if you hold it, then yes, it could be. But if there's not a held, so that's the discrepancy I'm guessing I'm seeing now.
So we would want to, we would redate once they met requirements, we would redate the certificate based on either when they applied or they met the requirements under the interim certificate. And we would have to do it that way as well because of compliance and with TRB and all of that, because there's all those things tied into having an active certificate.
Yeah, so 4 is correct if it's hold. Maybe
Right.
you need a 5
Okay.
that says for
Right.
those who held, then it's going to be different.
Correct.
so
the-
okay.
And the
So
other
we don't
thing,
need to
Julie,
change
was-
4.
Sorry.
Okay, so we don't need to change 4, but what you're suggesting is in the future, we add a 5 that deals with this situation where someone could have held an interim certificate, but they let it lapse and now they're trying to get initially certified. So in which case I won't set that aside for now so that we're not drafting language that everyone's seeing for the first time.
Right,
5.
Okay.
So I would say, because 413, I was going to move it as provisionally put forward because we have a legislative proposal that goes along with it. Put that forward anyways, and then come back and, come up with some language that we would suggest as this special category where
Yeah,
if you
it's really,
held-
that's a reissuance section that I'm concerned about.
Right.
Not you, this,
Okay.
if they're doing it during the 3 years, it's golden, it's fine how it is. But if it's
That's right.
held, that's when you have the problem.
That's correct. So what we would do in that case, as long as they met the requirements within 3 years, we would then go to their original date that they were certified and extend the certificate out for a full 10-year duration from that original date. It's basically what that's saying. So that's correct. But if we're looking at reissuance, then we would want to consider that for those educators that held it, maybe didn't meet by their expiration date, and then they would get a new valid date based on when they met all requirements.
Okay.
And the other one, Julian, was in
The other
regards
one,
to
the other
adult
one had to do
education.
with, was adult ed, yeah, and it's
Yeah.
just because that was the 426 section. It talks about except for fulfilling assessments, and then you can be issued, there are no assessments for adult ed. There used to be Praxis Core, but that's been gone. And so there is no Praxis 2, there is no testing for adult ed certification. So you may want, if you want to just clean up and have less language, you could get rid of anything that says, applicant fulfills all requirements except for fulfillment of assessment. That doesn't exist. And it's not valid. Let's see, position shall expire 1 year. Again, 1 year of issuance is no longer true. They're 3 years and now they're 10 years.
We also might want to discuss this one at an ad hoc too, because
Yeah.
due to the adult education shortage, we have started to allow interim certificates for our adult education teachers for the special education course in the event that they can't have one in order to get them in front of students as soon as possible. So that is one thing that we might want to discuss at an ad hoc.
Yeah, and it was kind of tricky because our last ad hoc meeting when this was brought up was January 2nd. So a lot of people were away and yeah. So are you asking that for now 426 kind of gets set aside and we'll vote on it later?
I just think it needs a little work.
Yeah, I mean,
language.
you took out subsection A and B. You can take out a lot more because it's talking about testing that doesn't exist, and it also talks
Mhm.
about a 1 year certificate which doesn't exist.
Correct. Yeah.
So it's not going to hurt anything if it stays how it is because that's what's
Well,
already here. But if you want to clean it
right.
up, it's
The 1 year from date of issuance, I assume, was for the adult education authorization, right?
that's if you were missing the praxis core. Like you could have gotten a 1 year to finish taking the testing, but there is no testing anymore. So you don't get a 1 year, and you don't need any testing. If you have your bachelor's degree and you have your ESL course and your special ed course, you're going to get a 10-year initial certificate.
Mhm.
So that's why I think, again, I think you can leave it. You don't have to make changes because it's already incorrect as it is anyway, because things have changed. But if you want to clean up later, there's more than just removing that one section you have grayed out. There's more you can remove because a lot of it's
Mhm.
wrong.
Gotcha. So in which case, let's set 426 aside to send back to the ad hoc committee. And so from the top, I move that this document, the regulations batches 6 and 7, move forward to the, gosh, I'm gonna forget the name of the committee.
LPDC.
LPCD. LPD. Okay, so I move that the regulations batches 6 and 7 move forward to the Legislative and Policy Development Committee with 413 recommended for provisional acceptance pending legislative proposals. That 427H be amended to read 10 years, and that 426 be set aside and not moved forward.
I'm just going to read that back because Natasha's doing as a solid by taking notes right now and make sure she has the correct motion. So regulations batch 6 and 7 move forward to the LPDC with 413 recommended for provisional acceptance pending legislation. 427H amend to read 10 years and 426 be set aside and not moved forward at this time.
Yes.
All right, do we have a second for the motion?
Second, Gustafson.
Oh, we've got lots of folks ready to second. I heard Margaret's name, so I'm going to say Margaret seconded. All right. Any discussion? Seeing none, we will move this to a vote, and I will do the roll call really quickly for the group. Wrote down everybody's names because we have different folks on the meeting at this time. All right, Tiffany,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Patrice,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
Mel,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Dorothea,
Yes.
Jenny Graves,
Yes.
Jen Delaney,
Yes.
Jen Rodriguez, yes. Cynthia Ritchie,
Yes.
Elsa,
Yes.
Hamish,
Yes.
Shannon,
Yes.
Deputy Commissioner Cynthia,
Yes.
and Margaret.
Yes.
All right, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next on, and thank you, Kristen, for all that work with the regulations ad hoc. And just when we thought that you guys were paused, it sounds like you might be meeting again to discuss this more. All right, moving on to our next items on the agenda. Just pulling up the agenda for my viewing purposes. All right, so next we have the continued deliberation of the November-December initial to professional pathways regulations proposals. Is that the one that is required at this time, Kristen, or can we push that down farther and go into the other legislative action items?
We can push this one down because when I was looking at a draft for either new language or legislation, I was kind of conflicted on what the board wanted as their first draft. So it would just be a discussion and doesn't necessarily require action today unless people are ready for action today.
All right, why don't we move that one down then, and let's begin with the legislative proposals, because we really do want to get those in front of our legislators, LPDC and SBE, and our legislators sooner than later. So if we can get through those, I think that would be most effective for the group at this time. Anyone who needs to step away to use the restroom or grab a drink of water, feel free, just turn off your microphone and camera and then come back on when you're ready. Otherwise, we're going to jump right in because we have a little bit over an hour of time left, and I want to make sure that we can maximize as much of this as possible in getting through these. Thank you so much. So Kristen, this is your packet, and my understanding is many of these are based off of the work of regulations and finding legislative fixes based on that work of regulations. So I'll let you go ahead and begin with the first one there, which is the reissuance of initial, is that the right one? Yep, reissuance of initial, or whichever one you want to do first in that lineup that you have there. They're all
Yes.
in the same material packet, so if you have that up in front of you, kind of scroll back and forth.
Okay, so as we mentioned when we were doing 413, when we were talking about the initial certification, 427, we talked about how it could be a challenge for an educator who, served under their certificate but didn't serve for 10 years. It could be a challenge for them to meet the requirements for professional. So one of the suggestions was that if you served under it for 2 years, for instance, that you would be reissued your initial educator certificate for a length of 10 years minus the time served. Right? So this balance of time would allow them to then have 8 more years to get to the rest of their professional requirements to meet their certification. So this would amend the Public Act 2441 and replace this last section add a section for what happens if you did serve under it. Because notice the line right before, the commissioner may reissue an initial educator certificate if you have not served under it, right? So if you have served under it, then you get your initial certificate just for less time.
Does anyone have any questions about that particular one? Right. Do we want to do kind of like what we do with the regulations at the end, decide which ones we're going to move forward, or do we want to do one by one?
I guess let's do all at the end and we'll move the ones we as a board want to move.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So the second idea was proposing a new scholarship in order to pursue continuing education. So this would be either the scholarship to use towards your master's degree or your professional educator certificate, whatever coursework you need to do there, or for cross endorsement in shortage areas, right? So this would create if this were to go through, it would create a new statute, like a new section, right? And you'll notice that this language is very similar to that of the Aspiring Educator Scholarship. So the new law would establish a professional educator scholarship program administered by the Department of Education. The Department of Education already has several different scholarships that they administer. And this one would be different from other scholarships in that you'd already be serving under your initial provisional or professional educator certificate. You're enrolled in coursework regionally accredited at a regionally accredited institute in order to either meet the requirements of your professional certificate or cross-endorse in shortage areas. So if legislators are wondering, well, why does it say you can be serving under a professional educator certificate? That's because you could use this scholarship in order to cross-endorse in a shortage area. So this would establish a scholarship that people could use to either pursue a master's degree or for the cross endorsements that require coursework like special education or bilingual, be able to get that coursework done. The proposal is scholarships for $10,000 a year, and that the department will come up with their policies concerning the administration of the scholarship. This language was borrowed from other scholarships that are in statute. So it gives the department some flexibility in terms of establishing what criteria they would like for payment and distribution and notification of teachers in priority school districts. Because for additional eligibility, the department may want to consider things like whether the teacher is employed in a district that has tuition reimbursement. They might want to consider whether the teacher's already working in a shortage area. I can't look into the future and see what other things the department wants to consider in terms of their policies concerning the administration of their scholarship. But I also know that the department is fully capable of doing a wonderful job on this, and they do it all the time for other scholarships. It was suggested to add in that this is specifically for teachers who don't qualify for the Aspiring Educator Scholarship, because the Aspiring Ed Scholarship is only for high school graduates from Alliance districts. So if you went to school and out of state, but you've been teaching in Connecticut for 20 years and you want to work in a shortage area and you need the support to do so, this scholarship would be established to give people that support.
All right, I see Jen Delaney, go ahead.
Hi. So the only thing I wanted to suggest a change in language to everyone, because we just went through this arc because it says four-year institution, the Aspiring Ed. We had to figure out how to try to include ARC, and I proposed language with my colleagues to change that as well. And so it's tricky because if they're doing a cross endorsement like at ArcTel, which is ACE's TESOL cross endorsement, or at CREG to cross endorse for special ed, or library media science, or early childhood at Charter Oak, those are not, how does it read here?
Regionally accredited.
Regionally accredited institutions of higher ed. So it automatically excludes them. And so I think it should say that and maybe or an approved alternate pathway, something like some language like that. And I do think it should say or, and the reason is you could be doing like ArcTel and still be taking a course or two, maybe in something else that you're working on as well. So we wouldn't want to, just with the Aspiring Ed, I kind of learned this year about the restrictions around it, and it was just like a language issue, really. That's all it was. So I want to try to avoid that with this. And that's it.
I see Shawana's hand up. Thank you, Jen.
Yes, my question is, where will the funds come from to support this?
If legislators approve this as a bill when it's someday a bill in front of them, then they'll have to come up with appropriations for it. So I know I know some things about the legislative process, but I know that they would have to come up with appropriations, like the bill would go to, I believe, the Appropriations Committee to determine where the money would come from. Um, that is not my area of expertise.
Thank you. Kayla, I see your hand is up.
Thank you. I just have a couple of things. I agree with what Jen just said, particularly around the alternative route. I think in that case, though, that we should say Connecticut state-approved alternative program, just because when you get into other states, especially alternative programs, it gets a little bit mucky. And they might have state requirements within that state that someone might have to serve in that state, all of these things. So if we are going to get in the realm of alternative programming, which I completely agree with, we should make it clear that it's Connecticut alternative programming. That was first. And to build off of Shawana, Dr. Tucker's last comment, I would also say that it would say pending availability of funding, because we might have to, in that case, prorate if there isn't enough money, and then say if there isn't money, we might not be able to issue a grant that for that particular year. So I think it should say pending funding availability or something of that nature. And perhaps instead of using the word shall, we might say may, because there might be some situations where someone's not approved for something, or so. I just wanted to throw those suggestions out there.
I have Hamish up next.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, because we're having a pending conversation about the masters and alternative pathways to the professional, this creates two things. One, I think, is it's important to figure that out, because the cost point for those things is very different, like depending on what route you go, and the money goes further. And the other piece of it is, like, I say this not wanting it to be the reality of the world, which is like funding decisions have to be pitted usually against one another, and there's usually conflicting priorities that come to be part of the conversation. I obviously think more is better here, so I wouldn't ever advocate for those things. But I also think that if it comes down to it, setting up like a prioritization list or some type of filtering criteria to help prioritize those funds in ways that we think they're needed most. So, like, I think that there are issues related to cross endorsement into shortage areas, and how does that help create better supply of those educators to fill those roles, versus just the an elementary educator who wants to go from initial to professional. There's just a different landscape and a different market for those things. So I think it would be helpful to outline some of that, because I think that we want to have the money go the furthest to solve some of the problems that we're facing when it comes to shortage areas, when it comes to educator background diversity, all those things. So, and then I appreciate, the nod to the aspiring educator scholarship.
Thank you, Hamish. All right, who is next? Lauren.
I would just add on to what Kaylin said when she recommended constraining it to Connecticut alternate route programs. I would also say if it's going to be Connecticut funds going to the scholarship, you might want to constrain it to Connecticut institutions altogether, because it has in there regionally accredited. But if it's sort of essentially like, scholarship funds for Connecticut educators, that you might want to limit it to be used at Connecticut institutions versus, online institutions that are in other states.
Margaret?
I just wanted to ask if we had had this conversation with the State Department of Education staff. The Office of Early Childhood runs a scholarship assistance program. We have a minimum of $1 million annually, and my group oversees it. I can tell you that it is very dense to operate. We have a lot of policies. Of course, we'll be very happy to share with SDE if this comes to fruition. But there's a lot of staff time associated with running a scholarship assistance fund. And if SDE is asking for more funding, was this something that they were prioritizing? And I apologize because I stepped away in the very beginning of the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Do we have any response to those questions in terms of, like, I know that you had met with Dr. Tucker after our last meeting.
I did.
Yeah.
What
Yep.
I will say
So-
is based on the Aspiring Educator Scholarship that we do have, because of that, we hired 2 persons to manage that scholarship. So if we're talking about another scholarship, we would have to have funds. That's back to my question of where would the funding come from? Because it's not just the funds for the scholarship. It would be funds to hire someone to manage that scholarship as well.
And I think that's part of, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, because I have not gone through the appropriations process, but if the State Board of Education approved this, LPDC and the State Board of Education, and move forward to the legislature, they would have to put it through that to see what the cost would be incurred as part of that before they made their final decision, right?
Correct, yes.
And the hope and the dream is going to be that they're going to give you additional funding for additional people, right? That's the hope and the dream.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you. Cynthia Sonia-Mayano.
So Margaret asked, I had questions about funding, which Shawana asked, and then Margaret asked about what was indicated in the beginning, because I had to step away. I'm not sure if there was a discussion on, I know it says here, the scholarship is for teachers who don't qualify for the Aspiring Educator Scholarship, but I know that there have been proposals, legislative proposals in the works to open that up to not just Alliance districts, but anyone aspiring to be an educator, just because we have a shortage in the state, and how this would, if that language got revised in the other legislation, how this actual scholarship would be affected. Because I know there have been discussions in opening up the Aspiring Educator Scholarship to not just Alliance District, but including all districts across the state. So I'm curious if conversations were had in regards to that. And then there was my third question, or my second question was, there are in districts, there's money in contracts or language in the contract in regards to those who want a professional certificate. How is that taken into account?
So
that did come up
there was
quick
3 questions.
So Kristen, go ahead and
I may have missed it, so I apologize.
Yeah. So from the top, your first question was about funding, and we kind of talked before about how that's really up to legislators to decide, on how on the funding they give to this. But in the end, we're 6 steps away from that. Hopefully, when this gets to them, they'll decide that this is something worthwhile and worth investing in. And I think it is. How this differs from the Aspiring Educator Scholarship is that the Aspiring Educator Scholarship, which does $10,000 annually for undergraduate and graduate programs, like you said, it's for students who graduated from an Alliance high school. But my understanding is that's in order to get your initial certification. And the difference for this would be these are also for existing teachers who are wanting to expand. My understanding was Aspiring Ed, they're planning to become educators in the future, that scholarship's not really meant for people who are already certified. Right? So my thinking with this is this would be a separate set of money, a separate scholarship for people who are already serving in education, who are looking to cross endorse and looking to get their professional educator certificate. So, it's kind of an area that scholarships leave out. And I think part of it is precisely the third reason you brought up with the contract language. Now, some districts have tuition reimbursement. My district has tuition reimbursement, but other districts don't. This could fall under when the department is coming up with how they're going to do additional eligibility criteria. They could come up with the eligibility criteria of, if your district does not have tuition reimbursement, then you're eligible. If your district has tuition reimbursement, then you should go through them first, right? But Hamish was saying, like, we want to give, some thoughts about like how to prioritize the money to make it go the farthest to help the most people. And I think that's something that the department could do, especially if legislators gave you the funding to run this program, that they would be able to come up with strong provisions and, reasonable eligibility criteria in order to do this correctly.
And for this scholarship, my last question is, for this scholarship, because I believe our aspiring education scholarship, and Shawana can correct me, there are people who already have a certification who are aspiring to get their master's or I guess cross endorsed, that can receive the $10,000. I could be wrong.
That's
but Shawana
correct. They just have to
Okay.
graduate from an Alliance district high school.
District.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And then are we, and maybe this is a department thing, are we also expecting that once they receive this scholarship that they're staying in the profession for an extended period of time? Because I know we get asked that a lot with the aspiring educator scholarship, that there is some type of, and I get it, that some people may go from initial to professional and that would help in that case, but there could be still folks who may leave the profession, so there's got to be some type of, and I don't think it's in this legislation, but maybe in how it's administered, some type of repayment, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I wonder if that would be a good thing that the department considers under B, right? So that they have policies, and if one of the policies they come up with is you have to teach in Connecticut for 3 years, or you have a repayment plan
Additional.
to pay back, right?
Mhm.
I think that would make sense. Right? Because I know with the Aspiring Educator Scholarship, their section of the law, which is the 10-156JJ, says it, something very similar to this and doesn't have a repayment plan option listed in the law, but
No.
that wouldn't preclude the department from making that a policy later,
Mhm.
I see Hamish's hand is up.
I don't think, do we want to go through one time with everyone having first comments before I go again, or no? Should I just go? I don't think Cynthia.
Yeah, if you'd like Cynthia to
Yeah,
go first,
go for
that'd
it.
be great. Thank you. Go ahead, Cynthia.
Thank you. It doesn't matter to me if you wanted to go first. But thank you. I really love the idea of doing something to immediately help the shortage areas, especially working in Alliance District and also representing the costs. Superintendent's group of 20 districts, we all continue to really have a dire need for help in these shortage areas that continue to be on the same list year to year. So I love the creative thinking here. Besides just being a scholarship program that administers scholarships, I think it should actually be a program, meaning, almost like a leader of a cohort, where I'm just envisioning how this could be creatively if the State Department sponsors a program as such, and let's say there's 30 slots a year, and teachers from around the state get to apply to be part of the cohort that may be paid for. And then maybe the State Department can partner with colleges to provide a really intensive but engaging program to develop skills and capacity to earn the endorsement area, whether that's a micro-credential or actually doing coursework or both, which is something that my mind has been thinking about, and in some of the proposal ideas I'm going to talk about. I think it could benefit if we had a specific plan and then a data point to say by the end of this year or the end of this cohort, Connecticut will have 30 more top professionals in these endorsement areas, and we're slowly chipping away. Plus you're building capacity when everyone goes to their own colleges and takes courses here or there just to they're learning, don't get me wrong, and colleges are doing a great job. But I think there's a benefit from, besides that, bringing people together like we are to collaborate, right? And to become a network. So this has the potential to bring a network with a shared purpose together of educators from around the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Hamish, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks so much. I think in considering how the conversation's gone, I just don't necessarily see the reason why subsection D is included specifically versus one of the criteria that SDE would potentially choose as its like outlining, you know, prioritization of funding, because it feels as though like one, it's that scholarship was set up specifically for a reason. And I think that it could be helpful. I don't think people should be preemptively taken out of the pool if the money's available and they apply versus, you know, being part of this. Maybe they're just ranked differently in terms of prioritization because they've received other state funds for this reason similar. So I guess I would just, I don't see D as quite necessary. And I probably would recommend just leaving that to SDE.
Okay. Are there?
So let me read back what I have so far. So I think everyone sounds like we're good with the idea of having a scholarship, but wanted to add in section A that this would be for people who are, number 2, are enrolled in courses at a regionally accredited institute of higher education or a Connecticut state approved alternate pathway in order to meet the requirements of professional educator certificate or cross endorsement shortage areas. Maximum grants shall not exceed $10,000 per year, pending funding. That's the changes I have written down so far. If we remove, so I had the suggestion to remove D from Hamish. I had the suggestion to add D from SCE staff. So I guess, do we want a discussion on whether D needs to be included?
I do see a hand up, Dorothea.
I did want to speak to the language change for the certificate. So instead of pathway, could we say program, alternative certification program?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. So is there any discussion on whether to keep or not keep section D? Jen?
I personally would like to remove it. I think that it's important that we support people that are seeking to fill shortage areas, and if they happened to get the Aspiring Educators grant back 3, 4, or 5 years ago before they're now going into working on another certification, I just don't see how that helps our cause. I could see the reasoning behind why it's there, but now that we're having a larger conversation around it, and just the dire situation that we are in and the economic situation, and just, I really think that it should be removed. But I'm open, of course, to everyone's thoughts on it.
Does anyone else feel strongly to remove or to keep? Sarah?
I guess it just raises questions for me, and I can probably find out. I don't know the total amount of money that's in the Aspiring Educator Scholarship. We don't know how much would be the total, like how many people would this impact? And I guess I was just thinking the more people we can impact positively by supporting them in their educational pursuits, but there's just a lot of unknowns here in terms of $10,000 for 10 people, 20 people. Are we going to ask for a certain amount, or is that part of the negotiating and this is part 1?
It looks like Dr. Tucker had stated that, because the question came up from Margaret in the chat, and it's supposed to be $6 million for Aspiring Educator Scholarship Program, but they actually receive $4 million is what I think it states currently.
That's correct.
Yeah. So I think that would become, I guess, like that negotiation of like need. Should SBE approve this scholarship, then that question becomes, what is the need? What is the anticipated budget that would be needed for this, for both staffing as well as the actual scholarship involved? I see Elsa's hand is up as well.
Yeah, I'm just thinking whoever, once a committee is created, they're gonna come up with the guidelines and the amount of candidates, of submissions, deadlines, due dates, and how many they'll be able to serve, within that amount of money.
Thank you, Elsa. All right, should we just make a motion and see whether it carries or not for this specific area? And we can do a quick vote on it and close discussion for that part of it.
Good.
Sure, I'll make the motion. I'll make the motion to approve this scholarship program, but with section D removed.
Okay, Kristen?
I'll move to amend that motion to say under under A2 to replace or to insert where it says enrolled in courses at a regionally accredited institution of higher education, to insert and or CT state approved alternate program, to amend the last sentence of A to read maximum grants shall not exceed $10,000 per year, comma, pending funding, and to remove section D.
So I think what we needed was a second on Hamish's and then the motion to amend it.
I'm happy to remove my amendment because so that one can go through, yeah.
Okay. All right. So Kristen, do you want to include your amendment with removing D then?
Yes.
Okay. So the amendments to A as well as removing D. Do we have a second to Kristen's
I'll
motion?
second
Hamish will second that. Thank you. All right, we've had some discussion over it, so we're going to go directly to a vote for this particular one. Let's see. So starting at the top or the bottom of our list here, Deputy Commissioner Cynthia Sotomayor.
Abstain, just because there's still a lot of unknowns for me and just questions that I just need to ponder from a department perspective.
Sure, and again, you can abstain, vote yes, or vote no. So thank you. Bob?
Yes.
Okay. Catherine, or I'm sorry, Dorothea?
Yes.
Okay. Patrice?
Yes.
Shannon?
Yes.
Hamish?
Yes.
Mel?
Yes.
Margaret?
Abstain.
Abstain. Jenny Graves? Is she still on? Okay, we'll move to the next one. Sarah?
Yes.
Thank you. Jen Delaney?
Yes.
Tiffany?
Yes.
Elsa?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Cynthia Ritchie?
Yes.
And myself is also a yes. The motion carries. Thank you. All right, so we can move to the next one. Thank you for the important discussion and thoughts to keep in mind.
So next was, sorry for the subject, it should read 3-year interim certificate with balance of time. So I had mentioned that in 413, we were asking for a regulation with conditional approval pending a legislative amendment. The only mention of the interim educator certificate that we could find in the statutes were these two sections referring to the interim educator certificate, where they were saying the interim educator certificate is 1 year and that it can get reissued for a second year, but we'd like it to be 3 years, non-renewable. So this would mean that our teachers in career and technical education would be able to have up to 3 years in order to finish their coursework and serve under the interim educator certificate while they do so. So this would be the legislative proposal that matches the regulations discussion from earlier. So this would move the interim educator certificate to 3 years, and it just is listed in 2 different places in legislation, so it affects 2 different laws. Both are nearly identical, but one is for trade and industrial occupations in comprehensive high schools, and the other is for occupational subjects in technical education in career schools. So this would change it, an interim educator certificate for 1 year with reissuances to 3 years.
Okay, I see Bob's hand. Go ahead, Bob.
We find that as it is now, even with the extensions that could be granted with the interim initial, that folks don't necessarily address their coursework in a timely manner, and that coursework is vitally important because they're required to take the 2 courses on education, instruction, assessment, and also special education. So we really want those to get done as soon as possible. And those are the courses that they're required to take to move from the interim initial to the initial. So I hear what you're saying, but we really do have that buffer built in. It's just not quite as obvious, so to speak, and it provides a little more impetus for folks to get these done.
Thank you, Bob. Are there any other questions? All right, Julianne.
My question is actually to Bob. So are you saying, so right now, we know you can get a 1-year interim, and then you can renew and get another 1-year non-renewable interim, and then by hardship, you can get a third, so you can get 3 years. Are you saying you prefer to stick with the 1 year at a time, or you're okay with it being 3 years? It's just less, it's the same amount of time, just less paperwork, or do you like the idea of them only getting 1 year at a time? I just wasn't clear what your.
I prefer to keep it the way it is. Like I don't want to give more time up front, and that allows folks to think maybe they don't really need to get started just yet.
Gotcha.
I'll do it all at the end, and we really need these ladies and gentlemen are coming to us right off of a ladder the day before. In some
Okay.
cases.
So you like that it's like 1 year, and then they have to say, look, I've only got a year. Okay, you can do another year. So by having them do the paperwork, it kind of brings their mind to say, oh, this is still something that has to be done. Okay,
And then
that's what I wasn't sure.
That third, yes, I am in favor of what you just said. Yes. Keep it as it is.
Jen Delaney.
Hi, Bob, I am curious, is there often a financial reason for why people aren't doing this, do you find, or is it just the stressors of the first year or 2 of becoming a teacher, coming from the world they were in before? Because I'm asking because what strikes me is, this is what they need to work on to get an initial cert. And we have like a aspiring ed program for people who are working on their initial cert, right? But we don't have anything for this group of people who may have graduated from a public high school and alliance school district. I started thinking about that when you were sharing this. I was curious if they often cite that it's a financial issue.
No, the teachers union reimburses coursework.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, I see Shannon's hand up. Thank you, Jen.
Yeah, I guess in talking to a lot of career changers in the work that we do, and I know that it's unique specifically for the technical high school system, but I think the initial reaction to having to continue their formal education in this way can be daunting at first, and not to excuse them from the requirement, but to just give them the runway in which to do it, I think can change the mental calculus of someone thinking about going down this route. You know, my father's a tradesperson, and I've talked to him about entering the field. And when he hears about this requirement, and with it, you know, the adjustment itself is a big adjustment. And then to think about things that they have to now kind of, you know, rightfully complete, but to do it at a pace that kind of matches with this big life shift that they're making, I think gives you, I mean, speaks to, I guess, the flexibility and adaptation, like kind of agility that we're trying to get at as part of this board work. So I like the idea. I think there could still be a conversation on an annual basis with administration about expectations to keep moving the ball forward, so you don't get caught off guard at the end of your third year. But to know that you have that up front, I think might attract, and it could be at the edges, but attract enough additional candidates that it could be helpful.
Thank you, Shannon. All right, any thoughts around that one? Any additional conversation? All right, I see Jen and then Kristen. Oh, and then got Jen, Kristen, and then Cynthia.
I'm wondering if hearing both Shannon and Bob's are, you know, sorry, I'm processing as I'm talking. I really wonder if maybe 2 years maybe would be a good way to find a middle ground, because it would provide people this idea of, okay, well, I have 2 years to do it. It doesn't turn them off to joining CTEX in the beginning. And it also doesn't push it 3 whole years, because, as you said, we want them to get that knowledge around special ed, et cetera. So maybe doing 2 years in this proposed language would be a good fit.
Thank you, Jen. Something to consider. I saw Kristen put her hand down, and we're going to go to Cynthia and then Bob again.
You know, I just wanted to add to what Shannon was stating. In my experience prior to coming to the department, I was an assistant soup of HR, and you know what I found in my experience, because it was my responsibility to make sure everyone was certified. And when these are working adults and when they transition, yes, they have their craft, but they're also learning a new craft, right? How to teach, classroom management, lesson planning, everything that new teachers experience. It's just a lot on their plate. And so I think having that if we can come up with a common ground of timing, I think would be beneficial, because it is a transition and it's a change. And people just need time to be able to deliver in the classroom. But what I found the most, and I would have to check in with these individuals regularly, even though they were certified for the year, part of your onboarding process is to continuously talk to your newer staff as well, to see where they are, making sure that they're taking the coursework. And 9 times out of 10, it was really time and the adapting and having time to go back to school, because some folks would be going back to school. And so it is a transition, especially for working adults. So I just wanted to share that's what I found in my experience. They did get the work done, but you really did have to work with them.
Thank you. Bob and then Kristen.
Yeah, I mean, just to respond to that, we certainly do onboard, and you know, we also have in our district, we have like most districts, I would imagine, have curriculum specialists. We have career technical education consultants, they're called, and so they're constantly meeting with their new people as part of our onboarding process. And you know, we don't tell them like in writing, yes, you end up having 3 years, but trust me, like folks know, hey, if it's too much, you need to take a semester off. There's a lot of ways that we provide that support. And I mean, really, truly, the number of hardships that I've signed off on for people that need that third year is very minimal. But my fear is that if we push it out even a year or another year, that saying you have this amount of time, two things will happen: human nature, wait to the end, or they're not getting. I mean, these a lot of folks maybe have an associate's degree. Some have 4-year degrees. Many have a high school diploma, and they don't have the methodology on how to teach. They don't understand special education necessarily. It's part of our job to, obviously in the school in real time, bring them along. And every new trade teacher has a department head, and there's usually in a department only 2 teachers, sometimes 3 at the most. So it's a very, very supportive from the school, from the department, to the principal, to the team. In our buildings, we have team district facilitators that are located in each of our 17 buildings. I'm on top of this stuff. So I just see I see changing it, creating potentially more problems than what we're trying to solve. But that's what I have to share.
Kristen and then Julianne. Thank you, Bob.
So I think the thing is, I firmly believe very few people are going to go read this law when they're applying to become a teacher at the vocational technical schools. I think the information that they're getting from their administrator, from their supervisor, from their onboarding admin is really what's going to matter. If you're saying to them, we want you to finish this coursework in your first year, and throughout the course of your teacher evaluation program in your first year, you're saying it's part of your goal to finish the coursework. The fact that the law has 3 years, which it does currently allow already for 3 years, is not going to change for them. It's all how the administrator chooses to present this information. You could probably keep almost everything about those same meetings the same way, except that they wouldn't have to fill out paperwork for the state. They're beholden to their employer. They're beholden to you. I think, as Cynthia was saying, with your onboarding teams, when she was an admin, being able to meet with the staff and provide those expectations would be a thing that you can continue to do, even if the law changes from 3 one-year reissuances to 3 years total. And I think, while the human nature thing is potentially a problem, they're going to have all their administrators telling them, hey, we want you to finish the coursework in this first year. We want you to finish the coursework in the second year, and being able to make sure that they're getting it done. One of the reasons we were looking at this is there was an asymmetry between the people who were having trouble getting certified for coursework versus people who were having trouble getting certified for assessments, right? And with the 2 different types of interims, what it originally was saying is that if you have an assessment that you need to pass, you get 3 years in order to pass it. Right. But assessments, I could argue, all right, I could study for a test in a few months, but we're giving them a few years because life happens. In the same way, even though coursework could happen really quickly for some people, we want to give them time to acclimate to their new building, to writing lesson plans every day, to doing that instruction. And a lot of that acclimating is going to come from practice and support while they're in the classroom. and focusing on that without putting the pressure on like, okay, they need to get this coursework done while it's in the middle of their first year teaching, that's just a really big expectation. So I think my argument would be to keep it as 3 years because it's more flexible, there's less paperwork, and know that their administrators are going to be providing them really strong guidance on how to keep these deadlines in mind and to prioritize putting this first.
Thank you, Julianne, and then Jen.
I was just going to mention anecdotally. So on one hand, having less paperwork, that's great for us in our office. But anecdotally, I will say when people, I see when people get a 3-year deferral of testing, they have that certificate and they get busy doing their work. And we have a number of people, it's not uncommon for them to get down to their 3rd year and they haven't even made an attempt on the test. So I do see it's not just for occupationals, it's also for the testing. So that's one thing that we have noticed. We have people who are like, oh, I forgot I needed this, or I didn't know I needed this. And now they're non-renewal interim. They've had it for 3 years. It's about to expire. And these people are having to fall back to long-term sub-authorizations because they never took the time to take the test. I'm sure the district said, take your test, but again, I'm not weighing in one way or another, but I just want to anecdotally share that I know people do that with testing. So I'm sure they do it with the coursework as well.
Thank you, Julianne. Jen?
I was curious, Bob, like when they sign on to do the role, is there stipulation that they like what's the agreement between the school district and the union on that? Is it listed that they have to, is it agreed upon that they have to complete the coursework within the first year? So as Kristen was saying, even though the law is 3 years, you could still set your HR requirements or your agreement with the union. I'm curious how that works to help me when we vote.
Yeah, I mean, it's in their hire letter that they need to complete the coursework in a certain amount of time. And I can't tell you if it says 12 months with the possibility of extension. It just has not been an issue with the union. The other thing that we emphasize to our teachers is, we try to be really supportive, but it's everywhere that you look in our handbook and in the legislation. Certification is your responsibility. So just the more upfront, the better. Also, typically we'll hire, like any school district, for someone to start the first day of school. Well, they may decide that they can't get into a course, or they may decide to wait until the winter. If we hire someone to start in November, they're not taking a course right away. Also, the two of the requirements, VTE 113 and VTE 116, are taught at Central by former CTEX administrators, and we schedule these courses, in the summertime purposely. I just listen. I said I'll never do this. Bob, don't do it. But you know what? I have 31 years in education, and 10 of which were a principal at the technical high schools, and 6 more as an AP, and 6 now in central office working with folks in this capacity. I just have to say that, I am always open to review and change, but I don't think that this is the change that would benefit our teachers or even our applications. It's too important to our kids that are our new hires, that are electricians and HVAC people and auto mechanics, and carpenters and welders, get those foundations sooner rather than later. That's I'll stay with that. I don't think I have too much more to add unless anyone has a question.
Thank you, Bob.
So, yeah.
All right. So because there has been so much conversation around this particular one, we probably should take a motion so we can decide and kind of move forward, because it doesn't sound like we have any amendments that are being recommended. It's really just a recommendation of for or against. Though I did hear someone say earlier, maybe if we change it to 2 years, but again, that wasn't listed necessarily as an amendment and acceptance. So at this point, I would cater a motion to move this forward, and we can vote to vote it down or move it forward. So do we have a motion, Kristen?
I move the 3-year interim certificate with balance of time language to go forward to the Connecticut State Board of Education's Policy Development Committee.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Shannon Maramon seconds. All right, we've had discussion around it, so we're going to go ahead and move it to a roll call vote. Again, you can vote for, against, or abstain during this vote. So we'll start off with Cynthia Sonia-Moyano.
For it.
I'm sorry, say that again. I didn't catch it.
I vote for it.
Okay, thank
Moving
you.
forward.
We're going to go to Bob.
Against.
Okay. Dorothea.
Against.
Right. Patrice.
Yes.
Okay, Shannon.
For it.
Thank you. Hamish.
Yes.
Mel.
No,
Was that a no?
no,
Okay, thank you.
correct. That was a no.
Thank you, ma'am. Margaret.
No.
Jenny. Graves. Yeah, okay, Sarah.
No.
Graves absent. Okay, Sarah, no. Jen Delaney.
No.
Right, and Tiffany.
No.
And Elsa.
Yes.
Okay, Kristen.
Yes.
Okay, Cynthia Ritchie.
Abstain.
Okay. And myself, yes. So 1, 2, 3. Just doing a little bit of math here, sorry, because I didn't keep track of all of I just kept track of the abstentions and the no's. So we have 15 people on. We had 7 no's, 1 abstention, and 6 yeses. So this does not carry. All right, thank you. We'll move to the next one. Oh, Kristen, go ahead.
For the record, I wrote down 7 yeses, 7 against, and 1 abstain to add up to 15.
Jenny Graves is not on the call. So it's actually 14 people.
Gotcha.
So that brings us down to 6 yeses and 7 no's. Thank you for the clarification.
Yep.
All right, so we'll go to the next one then.
Okay, before we go on, this does impact regulations that we did vote to move forward, because when we discussed it on the regulatory side, we agreed on the interim, on the language for 413, and we agreed that it should go forward provisionally. So I would make a motion that regulation 413 be not moved forward to the Legislative Policy Development Committee.
Right, do we have a second on that motion? Okay.
Second, Patrice.
That was Patrice, thank you. We will move it to a vote because discussion already happened earlier. So
Can you just restate the motion again? I'm sorry, now it's getting to be the end of the day and I'm getting.
Sure, regulation 413 not to move forward from the regulations batch due to it doesn't align with the legislation that we didn't pass here.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yep, no problem. So that was seconded by Patrice. We'll move it to a vote. Deputy Commissioner Cynthia? Yeah, I think someone's got their hand up. Hold on a second.
I did. Could you just put on the screen what you're talking about?
413 is? Sure.
Yes.
Kristen is pulling it up as we speak.
Right. So what we had already approved was that a 3-year interim educator certificate, non-renewable. And so if since we're not in support of the legislative amendment, then this needs to go back to the regulations ad hoc committee. Right.
All right, so we'll move this to a vote then. So, I'm sorry, Deputy Commissioner?
So I am voting yes to move it back, correct?
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Bob?
Yes.
Catherine? I'm sorry, Dorothea?
Yes. That's good.
Patrice?
Yes.
Yes.
Shannon?
Yes.
Hamish?
Yes.
Mel?
Yes.
Margaret?
Yes.
Jenny?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Jen Delaney?
Yes.
Tiffany?
Yes.
Elsa?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Cynthia Ritchie?
Yes.
And I will be a yes as well. So that motion moves unanimously. Thank you. And then we can move on to the next one in the last 8 minutes that we have.
Okay, one more screen sharing switch. Give me a second. Actually, since we never took a vote on the very first one, I think that's something we probably should do first before we review another one. As a reminder, this would reissue the initial certificate if you have served under your initial educator certificate, but not for the full 10 years. So I do move to the reissuance of initial certification with time served to the State Board of Education's Legislative and Policy Development Committee.
Need a second?
Second, Patrice.
Thank you, Patrice. All right, we already had discussion on this earlier, so we're going to move it directly to a vote. Deputy Commissioner?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Thank you. Dorothea?
Yes.
Patrice?
Yes.
Shannon?
Yes.
Hamish?
Yes.
Mel?
Yes.
Margaret?
Yes.
Jenny?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Jen Delaney?
Yes.
Tiffany?
Yes.
Elsa?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Cynthia Ritchie?
Yes.
And I am also a yes, so that's unanimous. Thank you. All right, we can move to the last one, or whichever one you think we might be able to, because I think there's like 2 left.
Yes, and I think we got it. Okay.
Okay.
So in Public Act 2441, one of the unintended consequences of how it was written is that it says that you will receive an initial educator certificate upon successful completion of an alternate route to certification program. However, that's not true. When you complete ARC or Charter Oak, you then go to your 90-day certificate to finish your student teaching, and your superintendent does your recommendation for your initial certification. So this clarifies that if you complete or successful completion of an alternate route to certification program dot, dot, dot. And you have taught successfully while holding your temporary 90-day certificate, then you can have you would get your initial certification. So this is just a slight correction to last year's new law to say that once you graduate from your alternate route, then you do your temporary 90-day. Now, the nice thing about how this is written is that if in the future your alternate route program no longer needs the 90-day certificate, let's say you finish your student teaching more than the certain number of days within your actual pathway, that this is flexible enough that, you can change the regulations when that happens. So if your program in the future changes, then this would still be valid because then you'd have the requirements established in regulations to describe the temporary 90-day certificate.
All right, Jen Delaney, go ahead. Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you. Hi. Yeah, so I've been thinking about this one a little more deeply, especially since like 1045P, 10145TW, those all have to do with so P has to do with if there's an alternate route created for school administrators. And T is for support staff. W is for people from an alternate profession, and then D is the teacher one. So I've been going back and forth on this because yes, ARC, my program, and the program at Charter Oak does land in the 90-day, but we're also trying to be innovative and leave room open for future programming. And I do understand what you're saying, that as long as something is written in 10145D that makes sense later, I think that would be okay. But I'm wondering if it makes sense if we say in here 90-day cert or if applicable, like something like that, 90-day cert if applicable, something of that nature, because I think it's just too set in stone. And what Kristen's saying for everyone is, for example, what you said, something that just fits my timeline, Kristen, because I'm considering making a second pathway at ARC in near future for if you're working professional in another field and you can't leave your job yet, you can only do the 8-week practicum and get the 90-day cert. Great, that's how we're established. But if we can make adjustments to do a full length student teaching, especially for people who are in a DSAP working their own classroom while they're taking ARC coursework, then I want to explore having a second pathway for people that are going to go straight to initial, because that is the thing that keeps us from giving an initial. So that's why I'm saying I would like a qualifying language in here, like has taught successfully while holding a temporary 90-day certificate when applicable.
Yep, actually, Jen, it does end with as appropriate.
Does that mean the same thing though? I don't know. I don't know about all the legal terms, if that would be, I guess I'd have to ask Lauren, right?
I don't know that we can answer that quite yet. If you're trying to frame the difference between
that familiar pull to compete, to measure, to prove yourself. Pause and remember, you have
I'm not sure whose that is.
I think
but-
someone's microphone is on. There you go.
No worries. All right, go
That's
ahead,
okay.
Lauren.
I'm not quite sure how you want to differentiate between as applicable or as appropriate. I mean, I think to Jen's point, if the goal is to be able to be more nimble, right now we have 2 alternate route programs in the state that lead to the temporary 90-day. We have Jen's program and then Charter Oak. We also, which is not part of this, not to confound things, but the other alternate route in the state, which is the CREC-based Connecticut Teacher Residency Program, that utilizes the resident educator certificate, and they have to serve under that for a full year before they move on to the initial. So that certificate came about legislatively at some point, well after, the temporary 90-day. And so, some of the thinking is the folks that are going to be working on the program approval subcommittee or whatever that working group is, the core working group, they may have to do some thinking, because again, the student teaching requirement, if you will, that's part of traditional programs, the current definition of that in the regulations is a minimum of 10 weeks. Operationally, I don't know of any institutions in the state that only do 10 weeks. They do a full semester, which is 16 weeks. So some of all of that may change based on the work that core working group does and the endorsement working group does. So it's a little hard for me conceptually to extricate the temporary 90-day from that other work, because if what we're saying is the distinguishing feature is the length of the clinical practice component, we don't actually know what the new rule is going to be around the clinical practice component of teacher preparation. And to clarify something that you said, Kristen, you referred to that temporary 90-day period as being student teaching. Just to clarify, it is not student teaching. When somebody is working under the temporary 90-day, they are the full teacher of record. They're not working under a cooperating teacher in the way that traditional student teaching is. So I guess that is all to say, I think it's, as with most things, it may be a little more complicated than just adding the two sentences.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that makes it worse, but